Hello everyone, it's me, Georgia here. Well, since my last vlog, sorry, I got my cup of tea here. Dry throat. And I'm going to probably be turning this way a lot because I've got a big spot. Don't want to distract you when I'm talking about, what's that? So, so I'm going to talk about dyslexia because, whoops, I'm dyslexic. So, and I want to just break down those barriers of what it means, not even what it means to be dyslexic, but let's just have this, we want to empower people who are dyslexic so they don't find themselves in a funk or anything like that. So it's more about empowerment, giving some emphasis to the word that's not negative. Let's put a positive on dyslexia. So it's about what is dyslexic? Oh, if you ask the majority of people, they say, oh, yeah, you can't read, write or spell. Like in Family Fortunes. Or the computer says no. Yes, those are elements we have problems with, but it doesn't mean we can't do it. So I can spell, but then it's more of a phonics thing. So I will, if I see a word, I'm more likely to repeat the word as I see it spelt. So when you get those sort of trippy words where it's going to have a letter in it that you don't pronounce that letter in the word, I might say the word wrong. So it's kind of like that. And plus our brain signalling is different. And people might say, well, that's because, if you tried harder, of course you try hard, but you have to retrain. We have to retrain the signal in our mind. We don't control the signal in our mind. Our body does. That's physiology, human physiology. We can't control that unless you take us apart, take the brain out, and then do some little twiddling here and stuff like that. And we're not going to go into that sort of stuff. So I want to break down like the labels. It's more about labeling. So is someone labeling you dyslexic? But sometimes that label may change your behaviour because you have been labelled that way. So it's about breaking down that label so you don't get stuck in the confines of that label. Like, I'm dyslexic, and I'll tell people I'm dyslexic, but that's only because if it's relevant, like if I go to an interview or something like that, if I don't know a question, I'll just say I don't know it, put my hands up, I don't know it. But I will tell them I'm dyslexic because usually you need a bit more time to process it, because once your signalling goes and you get that pressure, you tend to come out, you can't get back to where you got to because it's all jumbled now. So the outcome can make it look like, well, you clearly don't know what you're doing, when you do know what you're doing. Now, and that can cause frustration. That frustration you can then take out on yourself as a knock of confidence, and you have to get past that barrier of it. Instead of it knocking your confidence, what can I do to then increase that kind of situation? Like I went to so many interviews for jobs. I always do self-research. So I thought, let me go sign myself up to so many jobs and see how they process things. Because we all have that kind of judgment. Same, we all have that natural judgment. You look at somebody and you think, oh, you can see like a punk and you think, exactly, I've just labelled him a punk because of his dress, how he looks, if he's got a mohican and he's got a stud in his nose, because it's a label. We always brought up with these labels, and that can be the same with dyslexia, and it can work in your favour and it can work against you as well, because if you've been struggling with exams and you go for a test and it says you're dyslexic, it's like, oh well, at least I know why in my coursework where I've had much more time, I got good grades. But then when I did the exam, they were really low, even though it's the same information I'm using. So it can work in that way, but then it can cause you to go into a negative state of mind, because you might think, well, what I was thinking of doing before as a job, now I feel I can't do it now because I'm dyslexic. Maybe I'm not going to be smart enough or have the knowledge to do it. So you don't think about the in-between of like, well, if I trained my mind to plan, to do this, to do that, and get yourself into a routine, then of course I could be able to achieve it. But you have to be realistic, you know. So if I want, say like I want to be a fireman, I can't be a fireman. Well, say like I wanted to be in the army, because I wouldn't pass the physical. I know that that's being realistic. So it's not about, it's about knowing your restrictions. So just because you're dyslexic doesn't mean that you shouldn't work hard, but it doesn't mean that you can do everything. But because you're dyslexic, that's why you're not going to do it. So, and I only got this knowledge because I went to seminars and to meetings and stuff, and every time I spoke to somebody, they goes, oh, I know. I goes, oh, I'm dyslexic. They know somebody who's dyslexic, and they'll say, and it's always something, but when they come out with it, it's usually a negative thing associated with that label. So it's like, yeah, they're dyslexic and they feel they can't go out and do this. But what if they didn't know they were dyslexic? Would they still felt that same way, that they couldn't have done that and gone out and done this? But because the label is holding them back, they're not going to know their full potential unless they do it. So it's about empowerment. We need to break down this stereotype of, oh, you're dyslexic. We need to change the framework, the mindset, the negative connotations associated with being dyslexic. We need to break that down, because no one wants to be seen as not intelligent, or that you're stupid, that you can't read and write or spell. We have issues with it, but we still can do it. If you studied for something, you can do it. Do you get what I mean? You might do it differently, but it can be achieved. So it's about breaking down those kind of things. I went into an interview once, I won't say where, and I said to a lady, I'm dyslexic. She goes, well, yeah, okay then, but I've worked with people that are dyslexic before. Okay then, but it was relevant for me to say that because it was a video, then write it down, and then they look at it for your grammar, stuff like that. So they're basing it on these things and then talk about it. But I know with dyslexia, you usually have given a bit more time to process stuff. You need that time to process something, or unless you get it in advance. Because I've been to an interview before and it wasn't like they was giving me an advantage, but I was sent material and I did my own research, like what was the job about, what does it involve, this and that, so that I don't get frazzled when I go in. And that's nothing to do with that. It's so that my full potential can be then represented when I get there. Because, you know, noise, distraction, those things can affect you when you're doing it. And a lot of people know that when you're dyslexic, you're a visual person, and you get into a role of repetition. Always works for people that are dyslexic. They'll find that, you know, you could give them a job, and they'll do that job excellently, depending on obviously your individual, depending on your, you know, your work ethic, all those sort of things, because not everybody that's dyslexic is going to have this strong work ethic. We're all different. So, but, you know, repetition. Where I worked, I started to train people, but I trained them how I trained, and it works for them. So the methods that are used for people that are dyslexic, it doesn't just serve people with dyslexic, it serves people that are you know, just thing. Just, you know, just, I'm not going to say normal because we're all normal. No one says that we're different. Do you get what I mean? So it works for people who are not dyslexic. So, you know, you have different things that, you know, people that are autistic. You have people who have ADHD. Now, I wouldn't be no because I haven't experienced it. So there's always, you can say what you know about something, but unless you're living through it, you can't necessarily know the fine details. So it's a case of understanding people and breaking those barriers down and having that thing, which I think is very important for when you're young. I mean, I didn't know I was dyslexic until I was older. But then when I went through like the description of after all the testing and stuff like that, and it goes, oh yeah, you do this a lot, you do this distraction techniques that I did, like I was flicking my leg a lot. I used to do that because when I got frustrated, I flicked my leg a lot, or I'd get distracted by something else because it's not holding my attention, because I'm thinking I've already put myself in a doubt that I can't do it, and I'm thinking I can't do it, but I don't know why I can't do it. But then when he said you're dyslexic, I thought, okay, then now I know I'm dyslexic. I know I can do this, but I need to train my brain to keep up with what I'm thinking, if that makes sense. Like, you know something, but for you to get from here onto the paper, you now need to train your brain to take it from here and put it on the paper. And then sometimes that's the problem with dyslexia. What you have in here, you could have all the knowledge, but when you try and put it on the paper, you're writing it in a way as if you don't know what you're talking about. Because if someone asks you a question, you'll be like, oh, blah, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, this, that, you know, you explain the whole world. And they go, okay, then, if you just like to write that in a report, you just, that's when you start, and then you panic. So we want to break down these sort of things and empower people that being dyslexic is not a bad thing. I mean, that's what I said. I watch these programs and they're going on like it's the end of the world, and it's like, don't enforce the negative in the negative side of the label of being dyslexic. Don't enforce it. I see it all the time. Like, someone can't get a job. Oh, because I'm dyslexic. Did you think, you have to think through, did you not get the job because you're dyslexic, or did you not get the job because you just wasn't the right fit for that job? Do you know? Because, I mean, I went for jobs, and if I keep thinking, well, I'm dyslexic, I can't do it, then you're going to prevent, there's so many people that probably are dyslexic and they're so suited for a job, but they won't go for it because, one, they don't want to say they're dyslexic because of what their perception of, what people's perception of what dyslexia is. So they won't go for it because they don't want to have to declare that they're dyslexic. And two, they might be, even when they get the job, they could do that job, you know, like by the back of their hand, but they need to do it a few times before they can have it stored up in here in memory to do it. But then they won't ask, and it look like their progress is slow because they're not performing the tasks when they didn't say, okay, then, well, I'm dyslexic. So if you could go through it one more time and then maybe do a demonstration, and then I will then copy, and then I can just, because with repetition, I store memory. It's like a behaviour. It's a learnt behaviour. So, you know, you want to break down those things. I mean, you've got skeptics. How can you be sceptical about something that you don't know nothing about? Like if I said I don't believe in UFOs, if I didn't, I wouldn't just come out of a blanket, oh, I don't believe in UFOs, unless I looked at it and researched it and looked at it and thought, for me, I would say it's not for me, but I won't say I don't believe in that. because, you know, there's people that have beliefs. You can't knock someone else to justify your own opinion. You know, you have to be broad-minded. So, and that's the same with being dyslexic. Be broad-minded about it. So we want to kind of get rid of all these labels and this negativity that's associated with being dyslexic. I mean, it's not a social problem. It shouldn't be a social problem. So especially for young people that are at school or whatever, and they say, oh, we're gonna... It's not about putting someone in a special class. Just calling it a special class means that you're making it them be different, to stand out, when they just want to be like everybody else. I'm talking about on an intelligence level, not in, like, you know, in a social setting. You just want to be yourself, but obviously you want to be able to identify with someone else. Now, if you put a label on it, they probably feel like, if the group that they might be in, if they feel different, then that person might feel, I can't identify with you, which means you're going to start ending up with exclusion, social exclusion. You don't want that. I mean, I watched a program, BBC One, and the girl was stuck in her bedroom and she didn't go out, she didn't do anything, but for the fact she was dyslexic. But it's like, it's as if the mother enforced the negative label associated with dyslexia, because she got bullied, everything. But that's because usually when people bully someone, it's because of they don't have that understanding. Sometimes people will get bullied for any reason, but so I thought, instead of the mother keeping her in the bedroom and separate and stuff like that, get her to be with other people that, you know, find a group where there are other people that have been socially excluded, that are dyslexic. She'll find that there's other people, there's other kids that are in the same predicament she is. So it's about, and for them to bully her on that aspect, would they have bullied her anyway? We don't know. But it's good to take something out of it to eliminate that as a reason to bully her, if that makes sense. So, you know, to bully her, and then so obviously she feels excluded. Now her self-confidence is gone, because now she feels like she's worthless, because she can't, because the negative input, that the negative label of dyslexia now makes her feel even like their comments may be justified. So we don't want that. So even if we want people to get into a place of empowerment, so they empower themselves. If someone goes, yeah, I'm dyslexic. I mean, I don't care. If I say I'm dyslexic and someone says, oh, so you're probably, you know, not that intelligent then, I'll say, yes, no, I've got a high IQ. But that's because I've been tested. But I mean, it wouldn't faze me. It wouldn't make me think, oh my gosh, I'm stupid or anything like that. But obviously I had to come through that stage first, because I had those kind of doubts when I was first told. You know, everybody with growth, you know, you learn more things about yourself and everything like that. But it's about breaking that down, that it becomes, if you said you're dyslexic, someone just knows what you're talking about. They know the mechanics of it. So if I said I'm dyslexic, they go, oh yeah, so yeah. So it's not a case of, well, they're judging you in a sense that they're saying that, well, you're less intelligent, or it's enforcing their own values to be placed in a higher level than you because you're dyslexic and they're not. So it's breaking that down, that, yeah, so I'm still equal to you. It's just that I'm dyslexic. That's it. You know, it's not written on my forehead or tattooed on my, you know, my cheek going right down all around the face like that. I'm just dyslexic. So it's about doing that. And it's like, if everybody's aware, whether you, sorry, I was thirsty. Whether you don't have to believe in dyslexia, you just need to understand it. That's the difference. The same with lupus. You don't need to believe that lupus can do this, this and that, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You just need to understand it. Once you understand it, then there's knowledge. Once you have that knowledge of it, then it just becomes second nature. And plus, it will empower those who are dyslexic not to hold themselves back, if that's what they're using to hold themselves back, because they're afraid of people's reaction. They're scared of, they fear rejection because of it. They fear people's perceptions of who they are as a person because they are dyslexic. So it's not about being ashamed to be dyslexic. We have to make it into, it doesn't define you, I should say. It's just something that is there that you deal with, and that you have to train yourself to do what you need to do to get where you need to be going. Do you know what I mean? Everything is a journey. So, and we need to just empower people, like to give them that confidence, because without that confidence, confidence can be a really damaging thing if you haven't got it. So, I mean, you don't just become confident overnight, of course not, but it's just having that sense of empowerment, not having that negative on a label. Not to label people would be a start, but we have to have labels so we can identify things. So, but it's not, you know, you can have the label, like the label dyslexia, and the mechanics of it is you can have problems with writing, spelling, and so forth. But it doesn't mean you can't spell or write or read. And it doesn't affect your intelligence level. I think that's the thing. I think people have that kind of thing. Well, I'm dyslexic. There's a difference between being dyslexic and being illiterate. Illiterate means you can't read or write, but that doesn't make you stupid either. Do you get what I mean? It just means you haven't got that resource to express yourself or to read a book. So there's a problem right there as well with people that are illiterate. They will hide it. We need to be able to get to that point where you're not having to hide these. It's not negative that you can't read or write. It's negative. It's only negative in situations because it can hold you back from doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you want to fill out a form to, for safety reasons, health and safety reasons, that can be, it's a drawback. It's not, so yeah, so it's like that. It's not to say that you're stupid, but someone said that's why people that say, oh, I'm illiterate. It's better that you would be able to say you're illiterate, then that way that person understands, okay then, so what can we do to get you in a place where you can read and write and stop all this judgment. There's too much judgment. I mean, obviously I have judgment, otherwise, but it's to do with behaviours though, isn't it? Because obviously if I was walking down the street and there's a man holding a knife, that behaviour would be exploring that he wants to stab somebody. If he's going around raving, it's, I want to kill you all or whatever. So that is, you go by people's behaviours. So you make a judgment call on behaviours. So we really need to just break down these myths and take this negative spin off of dyslexia, so that people who are dyslexic can just say, I'm dyslexic. And there's not an opinion placed upon you without understanding. If you don't understand something, learn about it. That's what I'll do. Learn about it. Learn about that person. What can they do to make things better? What, if you want to even bother, you might just think, okay, they're dyslexic. That's fine. That's it. But they're giving you information. They're not telling you they're dyslexic because it's fun. Like, oh, I'm dyslexic, oh, I'm dyslexic. The dyslexia song, do you know what I mean? They're telling you to give you the information so you already know. They're arming you with information. They're giving you a resource, you could say. To say like, yeah, I'm dyslexic. It's not that they want your sympathy, you know what I mean? Just be, you know, empathetic if they have a problem. But then that'd be on individual circumstances. Because obviously you might speak to someone and they're dyslexic and they might be wanting to get a job, but because they're dyslexic, now they're depressed because they think they can't get it. That's different, sorry, repeat myself. That's different from someone who's just telling you they're dyslexic because you gave them a bunch of instructions and they said, I'm dyslexic, so could you just go through it with me, because so forth. And then if I have to write them out, there might be one letter that my spelling, sometimes I spell like I talk. So if they look at it, they might be spelt wrong, but it means the same thing in their head, like hello, and then you write hello, but you write in like this, like phonics sort of thing. So that's it really. So yeah, so empower yourself. If you're dyslexic, you're dyslexic. But then if you're dyslexic and you don't want it to hold you back, or you just want to, I think just I'm not going to say like be open about it, like go around telling everybody, you know, singing the dyslexia song I just sang earlier. But if it's going to benefit your progress, then say it. But then arm yourself with the response that you might get back, because you might get back, everybody says things to get back a positive response. Sometimes you don't, but that person doesn't know they're being negative, which might knock your self-confidence. They might think they're being, you know, they're giving their opinion without actually knowing how it's going to affect you. So arm yourself with a sort of like coat of defense to say, okay then, if that person comes back with this, do I explain? Is it worth me explaining? Because it might not be worth you explaining if they have this mindset, because you don't want to get into a negative mindset. Because once you do that, then it's like you don't want to put yourself in a hole. It's kind of like the lupus thing, like you don't want to get yourself into a mindset, oh, I'm sick, now I can't do nothing, blah, 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 this and that. And that will come with time, because obviously, like me, when I was first said I was dyslexic, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't read, write, spell, that, because that's my perception of what dyslexia was. Because no one ever said to me they were dyslexic. And afterwards, I just thought this the relief when I just started saying, but what have I got to lose by telling someone I'm dyslexic? Nothing. Apart from I've got everything to gain, because now they know. So if something happens, I can explain to them, and they might even ask me, so what would you do, because you're dyslexic, if I gave you this set of instructions, so how would you go about the instructions? Do you get what I mean? It's not going to take half a day. It's just going to take a few minutes to process that. Like, what would you do? It's just a question. What would you do then? Do you know what I mean? So I think with the dyslexia thing, we need to get that out there, because people have their judgments about dyslexia. They have their views about dyslexia, but yet, or their judgments, perceptions and views about dyslexia, and half the time they're never given it a thought about. So the person with dyslexia, have you ever actually spoken to them about it? Like, do you think you not have, you know, their behaviour? Do you not think that you might have now affected their mental state? You know, you don't give feedback if you didn't ask for it. It's like, you know, if you ate a chocolate cake for, you know, you just ate a chocolate cake, then they're asking you for your feedback. you think, okay, then I'll say, oh, it was yummy, or it was bad. But, you know, you don't just, when someone wants feedback, you're just thinking, but if someone outside, like another customer, like, so what do you think of the chocolate cake? It's like irrelevant. Why do you want to know? If you're eating it, why do you want to know what I think about it? Because it's irrelevant, because you're eating it, and if you like it, you don't need to know what I think about it. Doesn't make sense. So let's get rid of all this stereotyping, judgment, this perception about the negative aspects of dyslexia, and hopefully, you know, in a few years people will know about dyslexia, and you don't have to believe in it or not, nothing like that. It's not a religion. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to believe in it. And let's break it down so that we can empower people that are dyslexic, for them to empower themselves, so that they can go for whatever it is that they want to go for within their goals and their limitations, or whatever it is, you know, their social situation, whatever, without having to fear. That's a big, without having to fear the response, because fearing the response will inhibit you from doing a lot of things. So we want to break it down so that there's not that fear just to say I'm dyslexic. There's not that fear of saying you're dyslexic so that you can be socially excluded. There's not that fear that to think that you're a failure, as long as you put the work in it and you prepare yourself to train your mind to do what you need to do in order for you to give yourself the tools to work with your dyslexia. So that's it really. It was a bit of a long one, but dyslexia is very complex, and I'll talk like all day about it. You know, about, you've got the social side, you've got the behaviour side, you've got the scientific side, you've got the perceptions, the judgments, you've got the technical ones to do with going for interviews, but it mostly starts with yourself. You have to start with yourself before you can change the views of others. And I'm talking about views as in just relevant to the dyslexia, not about you as a person. Because if you're a really nasty person, then you're a nasty person. You could be a nasty person with lupus and you're dyslexic. But if you're nasty, you're nasty. Do you get what I mean? You know, like have a bad attitude. I mean, not nasty as in you didn't wash a week or whatever. So, so I mean, you know, you have to be realistic